Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second installment of Political Malware. I'm your host, James Wu, and today we have our two other hosts. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Anjya Riedel. You heard me from the last episode, but you know a lot about me already, so I'm just going to pass it off to our other host.
Hi, I'm David J. Thomas. I'm actually here this time. I wasn't
Thanks
here
for
in the first episode, so yeah, I'm here.
thanks for abandoning us.
Yeah, you abandoned us. You didn't get to be enlightened like we were.
You should have been there.
Yes.
It's very unfortunate.
Yes. Okay, so how should we open up this topic of discussion?
First of all, let's open up what we're planning to talk about. I think we're going to be talking about things like the Bloomberg campaign and the Iowa caucus and how that's been a major mess for Democrats and the New Hampshire primaries. So, where do we want to start off first?
Let's talk about our boy, Bloomberg. Our boy. Our boy. Whom we stand.
Do we?
Do we?
Yeah.
Does anyone?
Maybe the people that he bought out.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious that, there's no way that he would be getting anywhere higher than 1% in really any state in any poll if he wasn't spending millions. And I think I heard that he's planning to spend like a total of $4 billion on this campaign. So
Listen, he's like the eighth richest man in the world by Forbes' standards. He has 60-something billion odd dollars. Whatever he's doing.
I mean, listen, can't we just talk about how they are buying everything from us? They are influencing our elections. I mean, listen, I don't like talking about it, but we really need to seriously consider several questions. These blue people are really, messing up things with our country and our sovereignty. What do you say about that one?
well, I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, if you just look back at the 2016 elections, I mean, we saw Hillary Clinton lose because everybody knew that she was supported by all the big companies in the United States and she wasn't really for the people. And I think that's exactly what Bloomberg is going to try and do as well. But it's like, you have Donald Trump, who's really a populist and is really speaking to the American people, whereas you have these sort of corporate Democrats that are, only propped up by their money and not propped up by the actual message that they're trying to sort of get out there.
I mean, I think. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you continue, James?
I was gonna say, I think it's funny how these Democrats just bring up about how they're all so for the people and how they are supported by the people. The camp, their headquarters and all that is funded by corporate billionaires as well. You got big banks supporting Democrats, and at the same time, Democrats are calling out Republicans for being supported by like big oil and stuff.
Also, they push these like agendas like multiculturalism and all that stuff, but they still have like so much money, supporting them and backing them. If they were really for all this multicultural nonsense, then they would have freaking Abdul on their campaign trail.
Yeah.
I think they do already.
And it's like, if you just look at someone like Mike Bloomberg, it's like, with the sorts of policies that the Democratic Party is proposing, why isn't it that he just splits up all of his 60 odd billion dollars and just redistributes it around the country? It's like, how can you really preach something if you aren't actively doing it?
Why, if they're calling for higher taxes, why isn't Bloomberg being taxed the wazoo?
I mean, also,
$60 billion.
Also on that note, but kind of aside from it, I mean, we saw Bernie Sanders ride first class. Shouldn't he be riding economy?
I just think if he's, I'll say the one thing I like about Bloomberg is he's funding it himself. He's not relying on people to pay him to keep on going to different states.
Yeah, but I mean, like you know what I would say about Bernie. I think if he really wants to be a person of the people, he shouldn't fly at all. He should be driving cross country because it's like that's how most people get around these days. It's like because plane tickets are just so expensive. It's like
Hell, why
even
doesn't
if
he
you're
just walk?
Yes,
yeah,
why doesn't he
it's
walk?
like if you're flying economy, then you're spending a ton of money, and it's a ton of money that most people aren't able to afford. And yet Bernie's like, yeah, I'm a person of the people, but
And
you know
he
you
and he says
if
he's for
you're
climate
getting on a
change.
flight every couple days.
Don't forget about the pollution. They bring up about things like the Green New Deal. Their New Deal that's based off of trying to bring the economy into a greener area. But they're flying. They're driving. They're doing things that pollute themselves.
And they talk about, all these cows being bad because of the gases or whatever. Listen, God said, as long as there is an earth, there shall be spring, okay? And I don't see any of these people turning to become vegans.
God, I hate the V word. I hate that word. Leave me be and my beef.
I mean,
Don't
listen,
get beef with beef.
listen, I'm just a beef girl. I mean, like,
Oh
these
yeah, I know you like your meat.
I do. But like it's just these Democrats trying to take more and more things away from us. And we see them destroying the traditional family structure.
I think that's one of the things that's being left out that a lot of Democrats try to push for. Like they bring up all these welfare systems, but when you take a look at people like Martin Luther King Jr., he fought for the fact that African Americans should prop themselves up in the good old family values to integrate themselves into the economy and integrate themselves into society more.
I
But
mean,
what are Democrats proposing? They're looking for expansion of the welfare state. They're looking for expanding and keeping people poor rather than letting them build themselves up.
these welfare queens. But like, can I just be frank with you? I mean, I know it's like Black History Month and whatever, all this multiculturalism stuff, but like, even Martin Luther King was to some extent a degenerate. I mean, he cheated on his wife like multiple times. That is totally against the family unit.
I mean, I think every politician, every good person we know has done something wrong. Like, take a look at Jimmy Carter. He was a big old, like, good old Christian American values, but then he even said himself he was sitting in his heart in a Playboy magazine. And it got obviously Donald Trump. There's been a lot of claims about how he's been married 3 times. So no one's clean about being fully Christian in our stupid world of politics.
I mean, yes, that's true, but it's just people like Martin Luther King, they go on and on about, civility and all that other stuff and, you know, trying to bring back the family, and they can't even do that. I mean, with Trump, at least you get what you know, right? He hasn't claimed this sort of moral superiority, but even then, I trust him. I would have him sign my Bible.
I don't think I would let him sign my Bible. I don't think I would let him sign a lot of things. But I would respect the man. I respect the man for being upfront about what he says and does. Although there's something that I find really, really annoying over the past few years, and this comes from me, who's I voted for Republican my entire time, which has been a good old 2 elections. Uh, the fake news media on both ends just brings up and attacks Trump about how he might not be Christian. But then when you take a look at groups like Fox News, who attacked President Obama for not being Christian enough, they say who's to judge who's Christian, and yet Fox News is judging President Obama back in 2012 for not being Christian enough. Why aren't they attacking Trump about not being quote unquote Christian enough when he does a lot more things that might raise more questions?
Yeah,
Good
it's
input,
like
David.
yeah. No, it's like who's to determine whether someone is really enough of anything, you know? It's like it's up to the individual person to determine if someone is qualified enough for whatever standard it is that they find important, you know?
I mean, can I just add this, right? I myself am a paleoconservative. I truly believe that we need to, keep this foundation for our Christian values. And, even then, I find it that this is like so horrendous that these people they put on this skin of liberation and all this other stuff, and then they go back on their word. I mean, I just find it truly corrosive to our values as Americans. Any thoughts?
David?
No, no, James, you can go. You can go.
You go, David.
No, it's very obvious that you have something that you want to say.
You looked like you were ready to say something too.
No, 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 no. I think you definitely wanted to say something.
Well, I'll say this: with our United States, we've primarily been dominated by Christian values, and that's helped us get to the point that we are now. Now, with all these things such as social media expanding out, makes it easier for all these more occult ideas and all these more radical ideas, whether it be radically conservatives that really just go too far, and those that just really just want to kill religion. There's people that just absolutely hate me for being Christian, and there's people that hate me for not being. So we're just living in a very polarizing world where what we consider as good old Christian American values is under attack on all sides, even from our own.
Yeah, it's like, everyone sort of needs to unite. You can't just be dividing, especially when it's like everything is, like you said, becoming increasingly polarized. It's like, the groups need to unite instead of fragmenting apart, because otherwise then there's no way that you can actually win and actually maintain those sorts of values.
I think that just poses a good question on which candidate really just Democrat or Republican really just embodied those good old Christian values. Obviously, we have Mike Pence, the vice president, who's an evangelical from Indiana. But then we got also from Indiana, what's his name? Buttigieg?
No, 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 no. He's definitely not that candidate.
I mean, listen, Leviticus says that, like, what he's doing is a sin. I mean, he goes on Bill Maher, throwing in the faces of us, the rational moderate, and saying, like, oh, well, when Donald Trump is out of the White House, he'll just have to say hi to me and my husband. Like, no. Like, I just can't fathom it. I can't stand it.
It's like there's just so many things about Mayor Pete that just really contradict what it is that he's trying to represent, and yeah, he's just not the candidate that is gonna bring about what we want,
David, you're sounding more and more like Sleepy Joe.
What?
Do you need an app?
No.
Is your
No,
eye
I'm
going
good.
to explode?
Do you need us to clap for you?
Please
We'll
clap.
clap if you ask.
Please clap. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeb. God, what a lightweight.
Agreed.
Jeb, not you. Although
Yeah.
you're also being a lightweight.
Thanks, James.
No problem. I wonder what George Bush has been up to.
Isn't he like
Painting?
painting?
That's an interesting hobby for a man to have, I guess.
Not very much of a man, is it?
I mean, he's the ex-president of the United States. He can do whatever he wants.
And plus, he actually didn't divide this country like Obama did.
Yeah.
True enough. I think
Like,
go ahead.
he was not a great president. It's.
I think all people see that he was just a political insider. He came out appearing to be a progressive to the people and ran off of a progressive
Yep.
candidate. But then he just
Yeah.
threw that out the window.
Yeah.
That progressives would push.
I'm studying, Mom.
He didn't push. He decided to equivocate a lot of things that he wanted to do. And then when he was trying to
For a while now.
just bringing us all back to the middle, it didn't work. Everyone saw that as a farce.
Oh, I guess so.
I think
Oh.
President Obama was a tragedy. If he was progressive, he should have stuck to being progressive. If he was moderate,
Huh?
he should have
Yeah.
stuck to being moderate. But I think we would have went with Hillary Clinton back in 08, which I'm not sure would have been even better. We saw what she tried to do in 2016. Didn't work.
Like, honestly, if you look at, I mean, even if you look at the Republican candidates in those elections, like you look at someone like John McCain or Mitt Romney, it's like, you know, how are you going to look at those people and then call them a Republican? You know, it's like you have Mitt Romney who voted to acquit, who did not vote to acquit Trump. Sorry.
He voted to impeach him.
Exactly. It's like how is someone like that a Republican? You know.
We saw him on the campaign trail for a long time, just bashing Trump, and now he went cozy with the president when he got into the Senate, and now we saw his true colors once more.
I mean, he's a covert Democrat. He's like a deep state actor, you know.
Exactly. And now he got elected, you know, in Utah. He got elected. He's going to be a senator for what? He's going to be a senator until 2024. It's like, you know, he realized, oh yeah, now I'm safe. Now I can just sort of take away the representation from the people of Utah who have, you know, always voted very conservative, and he's sort of taking away their representation in the Senate by not being a Republican at all, you know?
He voted against Trump. Utah voted for Trump. He's just voting against what his people wanted. But even then, you bring up a good point. I would have expected, when I was watching the impeachment trial, I counted the votes. I would have expected people like John Tester of Montana or Joe Manchin of West Virginia. I expected them to vote to acquit President Trump because they're in states that voted for Trump by pretty good margins.
Exactly.
Good luck getting reelected. Doug Jones, he's screwed.
Yeah, and I would even be worried for people like Kirsten Sinema and some of those other senators in those very close states, because it's like, you know, how are you gonna go about voting to impeach Trump, whereas at the same time your state voted very heavily for the guy? It's like, how are you going to be able to reconcile that with your voters, and how are you going to be able to look them in the eyes and say, you know, I understand that you voted for Donald Trump to be in the White House, but I want him out of the White House, and it's because I am partisan. It is because I had no reason to impeach the guy. I had no reason to vote to impeach him. There was no evidence there, and yet I voted for it because of my party allegiance. It's like, how are you going to look them in the eyes and say that?
I think, like, it's not even just those in the close states. I think even states where Trump lost, like in Colorado and Nevada, I think even those states, those Democrats should be really worried because we got Cory Gardner, God bless the man, sitting for an election for his life in a state that went against Trump, but at least he stuck to his principles and stuck behind the party.
At this point, I don't even think Cory Gardner's election is an election for his life. I think it's going to be easy for him at this point, because I mean, it's like you up against him, you have John Hickenlooper, former governor, who was he was a presidential candidate at one point, and he got like no support whatsoever. He didn't even have the support that he needed in Colorado. And then you have the other senator from Colorado who was also a presidential candidate in the race. You have Michael Bennet, and recently, after he got less votes than write-in candidates in New Hampshire, it's like, you know, how are these people in Colorado who don't have national support being able to dictate whether someone who does have national support support, and Donald Trump, who has very wide national support, who won the Electoral College against Hillary Clinton very, very decisively. How are you going to have these people, like, who get maybe 40 votes in New Hampshire? How are you going to have them being able to decide whether Trump should be removed from office or not? It's like you have 100 people sitting in a room, and they're the ones who decide.
And again, that just brings back to the point of states like Nevada, who were really close for Hillary Clinton. Like, Democrats took Nevada by large margins in the past. Hillary Clinton, razor hair thin. How are they going to expect to keep their position? Nevada's clearly looking more conservative as things goes on. They had a Republican senator before the current one, whatever her name is.
Jackie something, I think, but it was Dean Heller before,
Yeah,
and he was
also
he was
a lightweight.
yeah, but at least he really spoke for the people in the state of Nevada, and it's like I don't even know how some of these people get elected in these states, because I mean, like you mentioned earlier, you have Doug Jones. It's like, how did he get elected in Alabama? It's like, you might have your own personal problems with Roy Moore, but if you're a Republican and you're in Alabama, you're going to vote for Roy Moore. If you don't vote for Roy Moore, then you're not a Republican.
Absolutely, and I think the interesting thing is Jeff Sessions is looking to take back his seat. He's going against Roy Moore in the primaries in Alabama,
Yeah,
and against like two other candidates, two other no names.
exactly. And it's
And
like, you know, I would be very open to Jeff Sessions being back in the Senate, but you also have people like Roy Moore whose entire careers were destroyed over basically one person saying, "Oh, he did this to me. He did this to me. He's terrible. He's a terrible person." And it's one person saying that. It's like, how do we know that they weren't a plant by the Democratic Party just to get Doug Jones elected so that they could get those votes on the bills that they needed?
I'm
Because I mean, it's like Doug Jones, he voted to impeach Trump. He's voted very liberal, and he's from Alabama.
a conservative state with good old American values, good old conservative values. And yeah, I mean, obviously, Roy Moore, there was all those hoopla about how he did sexual assault stuff during his
Exactly,
time.
and it's
But
it's just very clear to me that all of those were just total BS that were made up to make sure that Roy Moore couldn't get elected. Like, it was very obvious that the people who were saying those things about Roy Moore were paid for. They were paid by the Democratic Party to say those things, and it was very, very obvious that they didn't like Roy Moore because of the whole issue of him putting up that what was it, the Ten Commandments outside of the courthouse that he was a judge at. And it's like, the Democrats didn't like that because we all know that the Democrats hate the Bible. They hate anything to do with Christianity, and it's very, very obvious. So when Alabama, a state that has been very Christian and has voted Republican for several years now, when you have them electing Doug Jones, it's very, very clear that there was some sort of deep state initiative to ensure that Roy Moore did not win.
I mean, obviously, logically, I think he probably did it. But I think in terms of why they brought it up at that time, I think it is what you bring up. It's the deep state doing that. Like, that could have been brought up before, way before. But you got people like during Brett Kavanaugh and when Clarence Thomas was being put up as a Supreme Court justice. These things could have been handled beforehand. But why are they coming up now when they're looking for public office? I think it's definitely because of those deep state democratic deals that are just looking to dismantle them by going to their past and just bringing up things that have no relevance to them, have no relevance to what they do in their job, have no relevance to at the situation at hand. And I think it's a lot of that building up of just trying to smear them with things that should matter at that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even that they aren't just relevant, that they didn't that they aren't relevant, as I was saying, that they aren't affecting their job performance in those positions. It's that they probably didn't even happen in a lot of these cases. Like, there is absolutely zero proof against Brett Kavanaugh, against Clarence Thomas. It's all just allegations. It's all just people saying things. It's all the way that people are interpreting the actual facts that they have. So it's like there's no definitive proof. So why are you using these things to basically put these good men on trial and say that they are evil, that they're terrible, that they aren't fit to serve as Supreme Court justices or senators? It's like, if these things aren't even happening, I mean, you even saw it against our president. It's like, the Democrats are just always willing to chomp at the bit, and they're always willing to make up things that didn't even happen. They're always willing to put anybody on trial. It's all just a partisan witch hunt that's always happening against anybody who's even Republican in the slightest.
Absolutely. And you know what I think I find funny? I'm right now looking at RCP and just a polling site. Uh, I love it how Democrats flash Trump for being such a terrible person and how no one likes him. But he's sitting at a 43.4% favorability rating. Who's Nancy Pelosi? Look at Nancy Pelosi. She's at 40.3%. People hate her more. Less people like her. Then we got Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrat leader. He's sitting at 30%. So we got people who say that no one likes Trump, but no one likes them either. No one likes them even more.
I mean, also, can I just add to this conversation by just saying that, like, I find it funny that with all of these allegations, no one's talking about Al Franken. No one's talking about all these other Democrats that have been found out. Yes.
Yeah, and you know who else people have totally forgotten about in this time? Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes. I mean, how many women has he assaulted that came out about it? I mean, it's crazy. Like, these Democrats are taking away from real assault victims. Because, me personally, I think the Me Too movement is getting way too out of hand. I mean, all these allegations, everyone's canceled now. I mean, I can't keep up with it.
Exactly. It was like it was out of hand before it even started.
I mean, they have valid reasons to talk about sexual assault, big problem. But at the same time, people shouldn't be losing their jobs out of all of it. People shouldn't be having their lives completely ruined because of these charges being brought up against them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, is it even really that big of a problem though? Like, I think it's really, really overplayed how big of a problem it is because I mean, if you look at this, it's like one person can say one thing about you and then your career is over.
It kills you. I
It's
mean,
like maybe 1% of these cases that are coming forth from this movement are actually real issues. They're actual things that have happened and aren't just totally made up, misconstrued. Because I mean, it's not just politicians either. Like you have celebrities who are getting their careers totally ended. Like you
Louis
had
C.K.
yeah, you had Louis C.K. You had Aziz Ansari. Like, I mean, I don't like the guy's comedy that much, but if you look at the guy, like, he just misread a situation on a date with a girl, and he almost got his entire career destroyed over it. So it's like, you have these people who are just chomping at the bit to get at anyone and everyone, and even if they didn't even really do it, they'll just lose their careers over it. And like I said, it's like maybe 1% of these situations are actually issues that actually happen, but the other 99% are just total hoaxes that are made up to get rid of people that you don't like.
I think the really fun bit is how it's just really easy for all this fake news and fake information to just spread. It's just they could take these things private. Like if they were sexually assaulted, then go to the police about it.
Yeah,
Don't just
exactly.
bring it up years later.
Yeah, and then like you have fake news networks like CNN, MSNBC, all of those places that are just spreading all of this fake information around like it's fact, and it's really just sad that you have all these people who are just so gullible that they're actually believing it. It's like, wow, why are you believing these things that CNN, MSNBC are saying? Because like you have people like Jake Tapper, you have people like Rachel Maddow that are just total like liberal hacks, basically, as Martha McSally has called them. And it's it's like it's really sad that people are actually listening to these people that so clearly have an agenda, whereas they aren't actually listening to the information from the news that actually matters. They aren't going on sites like the Daily Wire and Breitbart that are actually reporting true information, and instead they're listening to CNN, MSNBC, all of these fake news networks, as I call them, that are like just spreading all of this false information.
I mean, yes, absolutely. I think we've seen this like a multitude of times with these leftists, coming out, with all these, you know, lies and just saying, oh, well, you're not humane if, you think that abortion isn't a choice or something like that. They spread these lies constantly, and it's meant to erode our social fabric. I mean, I personally, and I guess it's like a term now on Twitter, but I consider myself a trad wife. I mean, I know my place in the world. I'm fine with it. But these Democrats and third wave feminists, they all think that I'm oppressed because I like staying at home and cleaning and cooking. I mean, it's just terrible.
Yeah, and it's like, people are always trying to sort of bat above their positions now. If you think about it, because it's like you have all these people who are just trying to gain power. You have people like Michael Bloomberg, as we were talking about earlier, who are just trying to run for president just because they have money. They're just trying to get power because they have money, and people are trying to get to places that they clearly don't deserve. I mean, you have people who are becoming representatives, people like AOC, who are bartenders. It's like they don't have any experience whatsoever, and they somehow get elected just because they're able to brainwash people basically into voting for them because they'll promise all this. I really think that that's sort of what the Democrats' platform has recently become. Is it's just saying, oh, who can give you the most free stuff? And I think that's why Bernie Sanders is winning in New Hampshire. He's winning in Iowa. It's because he's saying, oh, I can give you the most free stuff. And then nobody really listens to the whole taxes part. And it's like, I think people really need to think about taxes, and they need to think like, if I'm going to pay taxes at all, where should they be going towards? And I think the obvious answer to that is towards the military. Like, we don't need to be putting money towards Medicare for all when our healthcare system works just fine here in America. I think that we need to be putting money towards our military, and we need to be putting money towards defending ourselves and also taking out evil people like Trump did in Iran with Qasem Soleimani, who had killed many Americans in operations by Iran. And I think that I do legitimately think that we do need to put more money towards the military, and we do need to go to war with Iran because it's obvious they're not going to stop what they're doing.
I mean, yes, on that note, I'd like to just say that one, you are completely correct, right? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've seen like so many of these liberals, spout off about, oh, we need to stop intervening in these countries. It's not moral. And I'm like, it's like, listen, a lot of these liberals are gay people, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
in these
Like, they have
countries,
no right to talk about morals.
and plus, in these countries, they throw gay people off of buildings. I would think that maybe you would be against that, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that we should do that in America too.
I mean, yes, I mean, of course, I mean, I am totally for that. As a paleo conservative, I feel that we are truly losing our values to this, you know, postmodernist, neo Marxist agenda. And
Yeah,
I'm going to be frank with you, I just can't get with that. I like my nuclear family, I like my children, and I like my husband, and I like staying at home and working. I mean, I just can't stand these people that talk about liberation and freedom, and then when we offer that, they get mad at it.
exactly. And it's like, they sort of just say like, oh, if you don't accept what I want you to accept, then it's a hate crime. You know, if it's literally violence against someone to call someone by the wrong gender. And it's like, you know, you were born one gender. You were born as a boy or you were born as a girl, and I am going to refer to you as the way that you were born. And if you are going to say that it's violence for me to call you the wrong gender, well, then there's a lot that you don't understand about the world.
I mean, we can see this with our neighbor to the north, like Bill C-16. I mean, I'm going to get thrown in jail for not referring to someone by their pronouns. I mean, come on. I mean, if I see a man in a dress walking down the street, I'm going to say, wow, that's a very strange man. I hope he gets help. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, here, go into the female bathroom where you can assault someone. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, and it's like I do think that's one place where Mike Bloomberg does have a point, because he has referred to them as men in dresses, and it's like, you know, that is a very valid point that he has brought up, and I think it's very good that he's bringing that up in the Democratic primary, because it's a position that a lot of Democrats have seemingly forgotten about in the pursuit of total social justice and in the pursuit of being totally PC. And it's like, you know, I think that we need to take a step back. We need to take a look and see how far to the left this whole country has gone on social issues, and we need to say, you know, we need to look at the Bible. We need to look at the way that this country has operated for hundreds of years, and we need to look back and we need to go back to that, because I mean, what we have now is just a total de-evolution of the culture that we have built up over so many years. And I think we're all forgetting about what it really means to be an American and what it really means to be a human being. And I think that people are really just forgetting that those things are simply not natural. I mean, if you just look at if you take a simple biology course, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the real goal in life is to reproduce and to have children and to continue your bloodline. And I mean, if you're a gay person, if you're a transgender person, like, you're not going to be able to do that. It's just biologically impossible. And it's really obvious that if you are gay, if you are transgender, then you have a mental disorder. And I mean, it's like, I think that all gay people, all transgender people should be sent to mental hospitals so that they can get treatment for that sort of thing.
I'll interject really quickly on this. Personally, I don't think it. I don't think as much that gay is as wrong. I think definitely though transgenderism is a lot more dangerous to society. Uh, One of my favorite quotes from Ben Shapiro, and one of my personal heroes when it comes to this, is this: that you're right, age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age. That quote and that uh, blast on the ideas of how transgenderism and how we should accept people for who they are. Obviously, he brings up a good point on how it's a mental health issue, and it is seen as and should be seen as a mental health issue. Being gay may not be as much into that camp, in my opinion, but definitely being transgender poses a lot more threat because there is a larger divide of suicide between transgender individuals versus straight individuals or individuals that are not transgender, individuals that are comfortable with being male or female. And there is only two genders when we take a look at it, male, female. Now, if you're saying sexually you're attracted to someone else based off their gender, that's different. But if you think you're a man but you're a woman, or if you're a woman but you think you're, or if you're a man and you think you're a woman, or a woman but think you're a man, then there is something wrong with you.
Okay, so James, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go back to something that you just said, because I do think I might understand why people say that you're not Christian enough, because you said you don't have so much of a problem with the gays, but I mean, all you have to do is to look at Leviticus 18:22, and I'm gonna quote directly from the King James Bible. It says, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind; it is abomination." So I think that if you're really a true Christian, then you can't be okay with the gay issue. And going back to Pete Buttigieg, who we mentioned earlier, it's like, I believe that that's the whole problem with him, is like, he says he's a Christian moderate, but at the same time he's a Democrat, he's a gay person, he's married, he has a husband somehow, and he supports abortion, he supports all of these terrible things, and yet he still says that he can call himself a Christian. And I just think that's not really something that he can do with any sort of good conscience. Because I mean, how can you call yourself a Christian and still support all of these terrible things that are directly spoken against in the Bible?
I mean, it's not that I accept them fully. They're just doing whatever they do, and I don't have any plans to try to force them to be in this camp that we are in. I just think it's not a mental health issue. I think transgenderism is a mental health issue that should be addressed. However, people want to address gay people, go ahead. But transgenderism is a much bigger problem than homosexuality, in my opinion, is what I'm more or less saying.
Well, I mean, I guess I can understand it being a bigger problem, but at the same time, it's like both of them are problems. Neither of them should really be accepted at all. So, I don't know. Maybe one is a bigger issue than the other. I guess you could say that. But if you think about it from the position of the Bible, from the position of a Christian person, I mean, you really can't accept either. And I guess if you have to accept one over the other, I suppose homosexuality is not as bad. But in the country that we want to have, in the ideal country, I think that neither should be acceptable, because the Bible is very clear on both of the issues that neither of them is acceptable.
Can I just interject in saying that, like, I feel like because we allowed these homosexuals to run rampant and to be allowed to get married, I feel like this is how we got here to this point when we're saying, oh yeah, it's fine to be trans. Like, I don't want you around my kid, you know? I don't want you around me. I don't feel safe around you. Like, if I were to see a man in a dress in my bathroom, I would be scared that I was about to be sexually assaulted. These are predators, clearly, in the same way that gay people are predators to little boys or something, Like, I just can't, fathom it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. Like I was saying, it's really just unacceptable that these things nowadays are becoming just a part of our society. I mean, it's like you mentioned earlier, the moral standards of this nation are very quickly being eroded away. I mean, just what was it in 2015? We saw the Supreme Court legalize gay marriage, and now it's already normalized. And it's only 5 years later, and it's like, how are we going to, as a nation, how are we going to accept homosexuality and just do nothing about it? And I do think that there are some Republicans who do understand that it's an issue, but they realize that they can't get enough support to really get something passed. Because I know there are Republicans who have said that they need to pass a amendment to the United States Constitution to recognize homosexuality as not being legal. And I do think that to get that sort of thing passed, we do need to get more Republicans in the House. We need to get more Republicans in the Senate, because they're the only ones who really understand that. Meanwhile, you have the Democrats who are just pandering to all of these people who just blindly follow PC culture and think, oh yeah, it's totally fine for gay people to be able to marry. It's totally fine for gay people to adopt. I mean, I don't think that any children should be growing up in an environment around those people, because they're just going to turn out they're going to turn out terrible.
I mean, yes, of course, I can completely agree with you. However, I just want to say this. I feel like we kind of got off track with this. So, like, is there anything else you guys want to say before we, try and talk about a different subject?
I don't think so. I think we hit everything on the nail.
Yeah,
we did get off the point from Bloomberg, but
yeah. I think we're
before
good on the whole issue. Although I guess it did sort of turn into a discussion on Pete Buttigieg a little.
true enough, but I think that gives us a good segue to the disaster that was Iowa caucus for the Democrats.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's hilarious. I, even see, Democrats coming out against it saying, how terrible it is. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah, and I think that Ted Cruz really put it very aptly when he said, I don't remember the exact quote, but he was on Fox News, and he said basically, like, these Democrats, they can't even handle the Iowa caucuses, and yet they want to handle healthcare, they want to handle every aspect of your life with the government. And it's like, I think that we should let people do what people want to do. I think that we should give them the freedom and the ability to decide how they want to get their health care, how they want to get their education, how they want to spend their money, most importantly. And they shouldn't be allowing Democrats to do that, especially if the Democrats can't even just count the number of people in each corner of a room. You know, it's like.
No, I just think. Besides that, I think that how we see the Democratic Party trying to do it again, just like in 2016, where they're just Bernie supporter, but they're just trying to suppress Bernie's numbers. They're just trying to boost Pete's numbers to try to help him out. It looks like the Democrats haven't even learned from the 2016 election that they shouldn't try to push down people like Bernie Sanders. Because what's going to happen is they're just going to make themselves look bad even more. It shows that the Democratic establishment is even more unreliable than it has already been for the past 20-some-odd years.
Exactly. And I mean, it's like, you know, ever since Bill Clinton's impeachment, it's like, you know, the American people have really never been able to trust a Democrat after that. Because, I mean, all Democrats have sort of been like, oh yeah, Bill Clinton was a great president. But I mean, it's like he very clearly lied under oath. He was not a great guy, and yet you have his wife in 2016 become the Democratic nominee, and you know she sort of just excused that behavior that he did that ended up with him lying under oath, and it's you know, and now you have Pete Buttigieg, who's sort of like a successor in a way, almost like a spiritual successor to Hillary Clinton, like a successor to Bill Clinton, and you have him who has theoretically won in Iowa. Although I guess that's disputable. And now you have, going into Nevada, you have being able to potentially win there as well with the caucus system there. Because, I mean, they've already stated that they aren't using the same app. But, I mean, if you look at the donations, like you've seen that Pete Buttigieg's campaign donated to the app that they used to run those caucuses. And it's like, that's very obvious bias right there, you know?
I mean, of course, I can't agree more with you. I mean, personally, I found like almost all of these nominees to be hypocritical to their own message in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you know me, I vote red all the way. I'm going to vote for Trump in 2020 again. But like, here's the thing. If I had to choose out one Democrat, which I kind of like, I would guess maybe Amy Klobuchar, right? She's honest and like she's not buying into the bullcrap that those progressives on stage spew out of their mouths like garbage every second of the day. She is clear when she says that's not gonna work, and I can respect her for it.
Well, I don't think I can respect any woman who's running for president, but you know, because I mean, any woman who's running for president is going to be exactly like Hillary Clinton. Any woman who's running for president is going to be exactly like that establishment sort of Democrat, because that's the only way that they can even get into the place where they can run for president. You know, it's like there's no way that a woman should be able to run for president, because it's like, you know, it's just not the type of job that a woman should be able to hold, you know?
I mean, yes, women are homemakers. I say this 1,000 times. I mean, me personally, I think we should remove the 19th Amendment.
I don't know if I would go that far, but you know, I do think that that there have been some issues with giving more and more people the right to vote. Like, I mean, oh my God, when they lowered the voting age from 21 to 18, it's like that's a huge mistake. And now we have Democrats who are saying, oh, we need to lower the voting age even more. Like, you have candidates who are proposing that we lower the voting age to 16. I think you even have a candidate who's proposing to lower it to like 15, 14, I don't remember exactly. But, you know, you do have these candidates who are proposing that we lower the voting age even further. And it's like, we already have uninformed 18-year-olds who've never had a job in their life, who haven't even finished their college education. You have these 18-year-olds. I mean, some of them are even in high school, and they're voting in elections. They're voting to determine the next president of our country. And it's like, you know, there's a reason that we have these age. Like, I mean, there's a reason that the Constitution lays out that representatives have to be 25, that senators have to be 30, that the president has to be 35. You know, there's a reason for that, and the reason for that is obviously that you need experience to be able to hold these positions, and I think you need to have experience to be able to vote as well. Like, I mean, even when the voting age was 21, I think that was a little bit reckless. Like, I think that unless you're able to hold office, you shouldn't be able to vote. So, I mean, if you're not 25, you shouldn't be able to vote in this country. And then on top of that, if you aren't able to hold the office of president, like if you aren't a natural born citizen, I don't think that you should be able to vote either. So even if like you've been naturalized and you aren't originally an American citizen, I don't think you should be able to vote. And I mean, we have people in Congress, we have people like Rashida Tlaib, and we have people like Ilhan Omar that weren't born in this country, and they've come into this country, they've immigrated here, and now they are saying all of these socialist messages. And it's like, how are we letting these people come here and spread these messages? Why are we not saying, no, you can't tell us how to run our country?
I mean, yes, I mean, first off, they're women. They shouldn't be holding these positions of power. But nextly, they're not American. They don't hold our values. They don't look like us. They certainly don't talk to like us. And they advocate for things that, as you said, are totally reprehensible. I mean, I don't want to be like Venezuela. I like my things. I like my house, you know? And I like eating, every night, unlike some of them did in their little sand dune houses, Like, I just can't get with it. I think that we need to do what we did after the Civil War and just, make it so they have to go through a strict process of, can you read the language? Do you understand what you're voting for? Are you grandfathered in? You know? I feel like back then that was the only pure way of voting. And now we have completely ruined it.
Exactly. It's like nowadays anyone and everyone can vote. And I mean, like, these voter ID bills that are totally sensible. They totally make sense. And yet they're getting shot down by Democrats in states because they say, "Oh no, voter fraud isn't a real issue." And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe people aren't voting for dead people, but people are certainly coming into this country who shouldn't be able to vote. It's like they're coming in, they're voting in elections, and they've only been here for a year, for like a few months even sometimes, and they're already voting. It's like, how are we allowing that? How are we letting these people come in, and how are we letting them determine how we're going to run our country?
I mean, yes, these. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's fine. But I just wanted to jump in on this, on the fact that America to become president of the United States, we should bring that down and apply it to every single level of office in the United States. We really
Exactly.
should. You
Yeah.
gotta be born in the U.S., born to American parents, and be old enough to run for office. I want to make sure that, I want to make sure my mayor, my governor, my state comptroller, or my senator, my congressman, all to be American.
Exactly. And it's like, in states all across the country, in these overwhelmingly blue states for the most part, it's like, they're electing people who really just shouldn't be who don't understand this country. They haven't grown up here. They don't understand the culture. They don't understand the economics. They don't understand anything. All they understand is, what they had in their home country. And overwhelmingly, in a lot of these cases, they're coming from places like China. They're coming from places like Vietnam. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from these places that don't have capitalist systems. They're coming from these places that are very communist or very socialist. They're or places like Venezuela. They'll look to those places and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's a great implementation of socialism." And it's like, well, what are you saying? People are dying in the streets. People aren't getting their food that they need. And I mean, these same Democrats are the same people that, I mean, we saw at the State of the Union. Trump really was able to bring Juan Guaido, who is who should be the president of Venezuela, who should be the leader of that country and could fix that country. But I mean, you have people, Democrats in this country, who aren't supporting him, and it's like, how can you continue to support the status quo in Venezuela when it's killing people?
I mean, yes. I mean, like, with countries like these that have failed, right? I mean, you see it just going out of control. And I want to like go back to a point you mentioned where a lot of these countries, they're like violent, you know? They're not used to our way of living and they want to bring that over here. I mean, we can't just import the whole third world over to our country. I mean, we see how that's working in France. We see how that's working in Germany. We see how that's working in England. And I just can't say that, yeah, you know, I like seeing the 10 Muslim kids on the street homeless begging me for money.
Yeah, I mean it's and it's like what I was saying about Venezuela is like people just don't seem to understand that socialism is bad. Socialism has not worked. Like you have Venezuela, like I was saying, but you also have places like USSR. You have places like China.
Cuba.
You have all these countries that have really sort of failed over the past few years, or not the past few years, the past few decades. Sorry, and it's like it's very obvious that socialism is not going to work out. It's not going to work out in America. It's not going to work out anywhere else around the world because it's just a system that inherently does not work with human behavior.
Socialism failed every nation it has worked in. Take a look at Sweden and Finland. Like they bring up all of those nations, but the only reason why they've been successful over the past couple of years, like even Switzerland, is because they opened the free market. They
Exactly.
deregulated. They were full-blown socialist nations, and we see where that direction leads to. We see where that direction of full-blown socialism leads. With the USSR, we see Venezuela, we see Cuba. People suffer. Oh, you know what?
Precisely.
But what doesn't let people suffer as much, or at least lets people, and lets the economy grow? Capitalism. Open up the free
Exactly.
market, open up the economy, deregulate, lower taxes, and we see nations grow. That's why we've been successful over the past 200 plus years.
Exactly. And I mean, it's like under Eisenhower, we had very high taxes. And then they were steadily lowered. They were continued to lower, and then we had Reagan, of course, who lowered taxes substantially, who lowered spending substantially. And what did that get us? Well, it got us a great economy. It got us a great economy for those 8 years while he was in office. It got us a great economy under George H.W. Bush. And then we get Bill Clinton coming into power, and then Bill Clinton ruins everything. And that's because he was a Democrat. He was a Democrat who had no morals. He was a Democrat who had no idea what he was doing. I mean, it's really obvious like you could show someone a list of the economy, like just a chart of the economy of the GDP, it going up and down, or I guess the GDP per capita would be the best way to do it. And you could ask them like, where was a Republican president and where was a Democratic president, and 90% of the time they would be able to get it right just by seeing how the economy was doing.
I mean, I'll say this: I love myself Reagan, I love myself Bush, I love them. But the one thing I really have to complain about them is that deficit spending that we've been going on for the past couple of years. Again, I love Reagan, I love Bush, and I love Bush Jr. too. But the one problem that they all kept doing is raise the deficit, raise the deficit. They kept calling out that they'll lower taxes, lower government spending. But what do we see? We saw increased government spending. And I admire them, but that's the one real big flaw I have to point out against them. Now, it's not even just America where we saw this back in the 80s. We saw Margaret Thatcher. Before her, it was like, what, Tony Blair, was it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever his name was, before her. The Labour Party leader that was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. We saw them staggering for years. But come Margaret Thatcher, a true woman of conservative values, a true woman of what can be considered Reaganite and American values of the free market. She deregulated Britain. She put Britain back on the track of success by deregulating, by lowering taxes. It's only fact that we see lower taxes, lower regulation, better economy, better people.
Yeah, but I mean, like, do we really need to care about the deficit? Like, do we really need to care about the national debt? Because I mean, like, if you look at it, we've had a national debt that has continued to grow, and having a debt really isn't all of that much of a bad thing. Because Like, I mean, if you're being able to cut spending, if you're being able to cut taxes, and that's increasing the deficit, so what? I mean, it's not like the United States is going to be able to fail. Like, the best way to have the United States succeed is not to try and cut our spending, but raise our taxes so that we can cut our deficit, so that we can cut our debt. No, the best way to do it is that, like, I mean, there's just no way that the United States could fail. It's simply impossible. So really, there's no reason to worry about the debt.
Well, I am a good old small government guy. I like myself a smaller government, so that's why I say I just want to get rid of the debt. Because first of all, that debt is to the American people. It's a debt that they owe to Americans. They spend more than what they took from Americans, and so they have to sell. They have to sell bonds and stocks into the American banks, but it's things that they haven't paid back to American people. So
Well, I
Americans are
mean,
holding all this debt that the government hasn't paid back, and that's why I'm saying we should lower taxes so that we help the economy grow. That's why we need to lower spending so that the government doesn't spend and take more money from the American people in the first place.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, is there a reason to really lower our debt, to like get rid of our debt, when what we see is that to get rid of the debt, you have to pay off the debt. That's just increasing spending. So
Well,
really,
that's
I don't think there's any reason to do that at all, to even worry about it. Because I mean, our debt hasn't destroyed us this far, so why should we even worry about it?
well, that's where I just say that again. It's just looking to be a smaller government. We need a smaller government, a smaller administration, and a smaller Congress to work than just giving them all the power. We need to give the states powers first of all, but that also comes with lowering taxes first of all, lowering spending, and I think we should lower spending on all our government programs more than what we can lower for taxes. So we spend taxes on, but also lowering spending by a good 90%, so that we do make that small little surplus that they can work with and just pay it down. And even then, when we lower taxes and lower regulation, that just means more money for the American people. We keep that 10%, that's just 10% of money that increases over time. So that's why I say we need to push for a smaller government, pay off all this debt. Which, by the way, President Obama, despite calling for lowering the debt, rose the debt immeasurably.
I mean, yes. Oh, sorry. But
It's just a problem.
I mean, yes, but like these Democrats, even though it is a massive problem, as you said, but from what I've been seeing, mostly Democrats are causing the problem with this debt. I mean, Trump has been the one to try and lower it. I mean, and while he's doing this, he has had to satisfy the media. I mean, help all these freaking demisexual sexual minorities, you know, just feel comfortable within their body or whatever. And he's been helping these poor welfare queens and all these blacks, right? He is a good president. He has been doing what was destined for him, and he has been helping everyone.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's like, he, as much as this country, or not even the country, but as much as the media wants to make it look like this country hates him, it's like, he's done a lot of good. He has done what he has said he was going to do. He's done what he was elected to do. And for people to knock him for that, I think it's really insensitive for them to do that.
I mean, I'm just going to say it right now. I'm here for 4 more years, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's
I think
been,
4 more years is plausible. Super plausible.
I mean, he's been doing so good with domestic policy and foreign policy, and he has been sticking it to those liberal smucks, both within this country and outside of this country, because he knows that Western civilization won't be destroyed, as he stated in his speech in Poland.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like, if you look at the way that culture has sort of evolved all around the world, it's like it's not really the culture evolving. It's more so people hating the culture, if that makes sense. It's like they don't accept the culture, so they try and make a culture of their own. And we just can't allow that to happen in the United States because I mean, if you if you just take a look at how our culture has evolved, I mean, it's not really the culture evolving, but it's more so people trying to change it and it unfortunately working out. Like I mean, if you look at the Voting Rights Act, if you look at the Civil Rights Act, I mean, those were just huge mistakes. Those were mistakes that have permanently eroded the culture of the United States and have permanently changed it. And I just don't think that we should continue to allow monumental change like that to occur in this country.
I mean, yes, like I know these liberals, they like to say, you know, these jokes like saying, oh, well, you just think that gay people allowing them or trans people, it'll lead to pedophilia or like us having sex with dogs. And I'm like, but it has. How many transgender people have we seen assault little boys? I mean, look at Jessica Yaniv, okay? They're pedophiles. They are sick and twisted. And I think that's why the suicide rate is like so, high. It's because, they know that they're mentally ill.
Yeah, and it's like they know that they've sinned. They know that they've basically committed crimes against humanity, and it's like I mean, if I was in that position, I think I would kill myself too. It's like because you know that you are doing something that God has explicitly forbidden, you know, and you're doing it willingly. You have your own ability to decide whether or not you're going to be transgender, whether or not you're going to be gay. It is a choice. It is very clearly a choice that you make because you have the ability to say to yourself, to say to your own mind, to say in your own brain, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that because I know that God has told me not to do it. And, I think that God is really just punishing them for going against his will. And I know that all of these people, all of these transgender people, all of these homosexual people are going to hell.
I mean, yes, absolutely, but like I just feel like we need to go back to what made us great. And it was our Judeo-Christian morals. And we have stood on the great shoulders of our ancestors for the longest time because we know that Western civilization shall prevail.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like Christian civilization is going to prevail because I mean, God created us all. God created this planet. God created this universe, and it's like it's not just saying that God is going to prevail, that Christianity is going to prevail. It's just a fact that it already is in power. If that makes sense, because it's like you can't just go against the creator of this planet and think that I'm going to get away with it because you are going to face eternal damnation and eternal punishment for going against the Lord our God.
I mean, yes, of course, I completely agree with that. Um, However, I just want to ask, James, do you have any thoughts on this? Because you've been kind of quiet.
Not really sure. I just think we, like as usual, we just moved to get off topic. But if it's anything of note, yeah, I got nothing to say.
Yeah, I do think that we've gotten a little bit off topic because the topic was the Iowa caucuses, right? Um, we did go a little bit off topic, but if we just go really quickly to talk about New Hampshire and Nevada really quickly, we've already seen the results in New Hampshire. We saw we saw here. Let me pull up the numbers really quickly. We actually if we look at the Republican primary in New Hampshire, I think that was a much bigger story than the Democratic primary because we saw Trump um, do
Absolutely demolished.
Exactly. He did very, very well in the state, especially considering, he overperformed how he performed in 2016. It was some of the best numbers actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the best numbers for an incumbent candidate in U.S. history.
Absolutely.
God,
Obama got like 36,000 votes when he ran for re-election in New Hampshire. Trump got over 100,000. No
exactly, and
other
I
president has done the same.
exactly, and he got more votes there than than all of the Democrats combined, basically. So it's
Absolutely.
like I think that is very, very positive for Trump's reelection in 2020. I think that Trump could legitimately win New Hampshire in 2020,
I think a
and
Republican could win in New Hampshire Senate as well. Like
yeah,
it's currently
exactly,
sat by a Democrat. They voted against Trump
exactly,
in
and it's
impeachment.
like I mean, if you just take a look at the electoral map, I mean, it's very obvious that Trump is going to get a very, very large victory in 2020. I think he'll carry like every state that he carried
And then
in
some.
2016 and then some. Yeah, exactly. Like I think that Democrats are being way too complacent in how they think they're going to do in this upcoming election because
I think they're too optimistic. Absolutely.
yeah, exactly. It's like, there's no way that they're going to be able to perform well, especially against an incumbent. I mean, I'm expecting Trump to get like at least 330 electoral votes, if not more. Because I mean, he's going to win. He's just going to win so many states, and it's going to be a huge landslide victory. Because I mean, if you just look at how the Democrats are doing, they're splitting right now. You see the moderate faction, then you see like the socialist faction. I wouldn't even call them moderates. Honestly, I would call them more. They're closet socialists. Basically, they're also socialists, but they're just a little bit quieter about it. And if you look at them, and then you look at impeachment. I mean, you saw that the impeachment was a massive failure. You saw it was party line, except for Mitt Romney. But I mean, can you really call Romney a Republican at this point? I mean, you saw it just go totally, totally party line, totally partisan, and it's like, can you really call that an impeachment if it's just the House taking total dramatic action to bring these charges against our president with no grounds whatsoever, and then the Senate to hold a trial to waste taxpayer money and time by holding this trial, and you have all of this information that is by no means impeachable. I mean, just take Trump's word for it. It was a perfectly good phone call. And I think that anybody who says that it wasn't is just totally delusional because, I mean, the president does have to take action to get things done. And I think it's very, very obvious that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were working in Ukraine and they were using and abusing their power. If anybody should be getting impeached, I think that we should retroactively impeach Joe Biden from the vice presidency, you know?
I mean, yes, and to go off of that, right? There have been, during the impeachment trial, there were whispers going about that McConnell said that, hey, we'll allow you to have some witnesses if we can bring Joe Biden in. And Schumer said no, right? That would have helped him. Having witnesses would have helped the Democrats, apparently,
Exactly.
right? But
But they're like, oh, you can use the exact same argument that they used against the Republicans against them. It's like they refuse to compromise, and it's like the Democrats were saying to Trump about the witnesses, like if you've done nothing wrong, then you have nothing to hide, and it's like. Well, then what does Joe Biden have to hide? Why is Joe Biden not coming there to testify when his son is so directly involved in the situation? I mean, if they could have, if the Democrats could have even conceded to allow Hunter Biden to testify, it's like, I think that there could have been a compromise there, but I think that the Democrats have just become so polarized, and they've begun such an ideological crusade almost towards socialism that I think that they have become totally unable to work with the other side, and I think it's really just the Democrats are hurting everybody that they represent by refusing to work with Republicans.
Absolutely true. And obviously, you to bring up on how they could have had the Bidens speak. Like, if they had nothing to hide, then why fight me to protect them? And it's only when the Democrats, like, the Democrats have brought up impeachment over and over and over again beforehand. But the only reason why they acted this time was because one of their own, the one that they want to be president, Nancy Pelosi wanted to be president. Like, we see Nancy Pelosi in bed with Joe Biden on this. Like, she saw Trump trying to target Biden, and even though it had nothing to do with Joe Biden specifically, because this was an investigation on Ukrainian corruption. This was a valid phone call by President Trump to President Zelensky. And the only reason why they made a big fuss was because Hunter Biden was related to Joe Biden. And they wanted to protect Joe Biden from whatever shady dealings that his son did, and even what he did as Vice President of the United States.
Exactly. It's like I think that everybody sort of just gave Joe Biden a pass in 2008 and in 2012 and throughout the entirety of the Obama presidency, because I think they were sort of just like, oh, he's just a lovable old man. But really, I mean, if you look at his motives, it's very clear that Joe Biden became vice president because he wanted to pursue power. And I mean, it's like if you look at his presidential runs in 2008 and his other one, I think it was in the 90s, you can see that he never won a single contest. He never did very well, and yet he ran for president anyways. And why was that? It was probably because he wanted power. I think it's very, very valid that his son would also, go in the pursuit of that, and that's why he would be on the board of that company in Ukraine. And I think it's perfectly sensible for the president of the United States to call the president of Ukraine and question them about that and ask them to begin an investigation into that, because that's very worrying for our democracy and it's very worrying for America. And yet the Democrats wanted to protect the front runner in their presidential nomination contest. And, even though it's obvious that nobody who's running in the Democratic primary would be able to beat Trump with his approval numbers in the states that really matter, in the swing states, it's really obvious that Donald Trump is going to win a total electoral college sweep. And yet the Democrats seem to think that, oh, in 2020, we're going to be getting Trump out of office. But it's like, that's not what the Americans want. What the Americans want is what Donald Trump is bringing, and that's a good economy, it's jobs, it's a better America for everybody to live in, and yet the Democrats seem to think that that's a bad thing, I guess.
Absolutely. And if it's anything of note, Trump, after the impeachment trial, there was a poll that looked at his job performance. He's doing well. His poll numbers have been increasing over the months. Because, you know why? Because of exactly what you said. His job performance, his ability to grow the economy. Our economy has been booming since he came into office. And when we take a look at Democrats and what they've been calling out for Trump, they just try to paint it as a bad thing. They try to want to, again, what I said earlier when it came down to poverty, they don't want to help people get out of poverty. They're just doing things to help them to just stay in poverty. And obviously with the electoral landslide, like, we've seen time and time again that after, like, President Bill Clinton, when he was impeached, his numbers grew. People rallied behind him, and people are going to rally behind Trump again.
Exactly.
States that were close are just going to rally behind him. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. They voted for Trump by small margins. They're going to grow because that base are more energized. They're going to push for more people to vote for Trump. His supporters are going to be louder. They're going to be happier, and they're going to be pushing this as a president that has been treated unfairly. And it's true. He has been treated unfairly. States where he'll grow in: Nevada, he'll grow in; Virginia, he'll grow in; New Hampshire, even Maine. I'm going to say this. I think Maine could go to President Trump at large. Not just the 2nd district.
Yeah, and
at large.
And you know what? I think that this would be an even bigger blow to the Democrats, but I think that Trump could honestly pick up Minnesota, because I mean, Minnesota was very close in 2016.
KK Moon coming up.
I do think that Trump could pick it up. So I think that Trump, I do have a map pulled up here. I think that he could get upwards of 350 electoral votes, just because of how the Democrats are running this election and how they're trying to defame Trump.
No, thank you, Moon. It's all good.